Two houses of the people on different sides of the Atlantic, both on political shores, threatened by eroding respect for truth, compromise, and civility. Tonight, the U.S. Congress and the German Bundestag, leading democracies. Are they still leading democracy? I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
Wolfgang Schäuble has achieved the required majority and is duly elected president of the German parliament.
Mr. Chairman, I accept the election. The overwhelming majority of German citizens wants us to work together in a civilized way. And in turbulent times like ours, there is a growing need for forms of behavior that haven't been spoken about for a long time because they were seen as self-evident. In the past months in our country, there have been tones of contempt and debasement. That has no place in a civilized means of working together.
Also coming up, U.S. Senator Bob Corker giving voice to a language no other Republican congressman has dared to speak publicly, calling Donald Trump debasing to the nation and an utterly untruthful president.
You know, you would think he would aspire to be the President of the United States and act like a President of the United States, but, you know, that's just not going to be the case, apparently.
We begin the day with two men, two countries, and the endangered values spoken to today. Germany's former finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble, and U.S. Senator Bob Corker both delivered in distinctive styles and different languages the message that politics cannot continue to go on as before. More on Senator Corker later. Here in Berlin, Germany's newly elected parliament held its first session today. For the first time in 6 decades, the parliament is home to a far-right political party. The AfD became Germany's third biggest party in the national election last month, riding a wave of anti-immigration and promises to prosecute the chancellor and to disrupt the establishment. And that is where Wolfgang Schäuble enters the stage. Today, he was elected president of the parliament, or better said, guardian of the political peace. Mr. Schäuble's acceptance speech served as a warning to those preparing to misbehave, but also as an appeal to political discourse that doesn't aim for something that is, let's just say, smaller than the least common denominator.
It now falls to Parliament's longest-serving member to keep things under control. With Wolfgang Schäuble elected president of the Bundestag, the politician from Chancellor Merkel's party called for calm proceedings amid debate and to play by the rules.
The way we speak to one another can set an example for discourse throughout society. We are not here to beat each other up.
The new parliament has more members than ever, and 40% of them are newcomers. The business-friendly FDP is back, and the far-right AfD is in for the first time. Under old rules, a member of the AfD would have opened the first session as the oldest MP, but this time that role went to a veteran FDP lawmaker. The rules on the matter were recently changed, which the AfD sees as an affront.
This rule stood unchanged in 150 years of parliamentary history. There's only one exception. In 1933, it was broken by Hermann Göring because, as a Nazi, he wanted to ostracize his political enemies.
The first exchanges already proved fiery.
If you are seriously comparing yourselves to victims of Hermann Göring, then you've already outdone your own crudity.
Both the SPD and the Left Party are rallying for more open confrontation with the Chancellor.
The Parliament must resume its role as the main stage of political exchange and not TV talk shows or one-on-one interviews from reporters, Madam Chancellor. That means that the parties, especially the opposition parties, can suggest topics here that the Chancellor might find very unpleasant.
But Merkel's Conservatives and her potential coalition partners rejected that suggestion.
The right to question must remain an instrument of parliamentary control and not a weapon for the opposition.
You want to make a show of us with the history lesson today, and we won't allow it. Each parliamentary faction has the right to nominate a vice president in the assembly, but the AFD's candidate was rejected by the other MPs for stating Islam is a political ideology and not a religion.
And with that, you see, we've already got the first points of conflict in this new parliament. To talk about that, here in the studio with me is our political correspondent, Kate Brady. It's good to have you here at the big table, Kate. Let's talk about the referee for all of this, Wolfgang Schäuble today. You know, for our viewers, they may not be aware that the parliament even has a president. I mean, how important is his position, president, and how important was it that Wolfgang Schäuble became the president?
Of course, he's like a speaker in other countries' parliaments, and his role is really to keep that balance. And this is going to be more important than ever now that the AFD, the far-right AFD, are in parliament. As people have said in the past, that German politics, or kind of the action that goes on in German parliament, can sometimes be a little bit mundane. And now they've got quite the opposite, and things are going to could get quite rowdy in the next few sessions over the next months and even the next 4 years of this parliament. And of course, Schäuble has that experience, and that's something that a lot of people are going to be turning to. And obviously his role as the Bundestag president, he'll be directing the debates and saying who can speak when, and more importantly, perhaps who can't speak at a certain point. And he'll be making sure that the conduct is correct in Parliament, that it follows those rules.
And you were there today. I mean, do you get the sense that most parliamentarians, are they confident that Wolfgang Schäuble will be able to manage this, what could be a very rowdy crowd now with the AFD? I mean, the AFD has, what, more than 80 or 90 members of parliament now.
Exactly. I mean, even before today's vote, which saw Wolfgang Schäuble voted in as the Bundestag president, we even had the opposition parties, members from the SPD, the Social Democrats, and the Left Party backing the decision of Angela Merkel's CDU to put Schäuble forward as their nominee for the presidency in the Bundestag. But the other MPs are also going to have to play a role as well in looking ahead to how they deal with the AFD. Of course, if they completely ignore them and try to shut down any of their arguments in Parliament, they'll be seen as ignoring that 12.6% of voters who voted for the AFD. But at the same time, there's the concern that they don't want to let them get away with everything, because, of course, then there's the concern that they will use the time that they have in Parliament to push forward those far-right ideas.
Those ideas and that agenda. And we have to remind people that the AFD was elected on a promise to try to prosecute the German Chancellor for her refugee policy and also to disrupt the establishment the way it is today. And we've got a story now giving you a look at the AFD, which was arguably the star party of this new parliament today.
Viele Menschen im Lande fürchten die kulturelle Identität.
Integration, das ist doch nicht die Aufgabe von uns.
Eine Union, die stolz ist auf unser Deutschland.
Unsere Heimat.
Heimat.
Wir lieben dieses Land.
Germany's politicians are adopting a new vocabulary. Words such as fatherland, love, identity, country, and pride. The author Caroline Emke asks if these politicians are copying Germany's nationalist AfD party.
The decisive factor is how strongly the AfD can continue to influence public discussions and determine how certain topics are discussed. In my opinion, the AfD have been surprisingly successful in doing this.
AfD politicians take their place in Germany's Bundestag for the first time today, but their influence seems to be bigger than the number of votes the party won in Germany's recent elections.
We will take back our country and our people.
A sign of the times, says Karl-Heinz Weissmann, one of the intellectual fathers of Germany's new right.
The success of the AfD isn't simply because it managed to unite nearly 13% of voters behind it. Their success is linked to a greater trend, a bigger movement, the end of which we can't yet foresee.
deren Ende noch lange nicht absehbar ist.
And this trend is already changing the climate for those from a non-German background, people such as Ezra Kujuk, who often speaks for Muslims in Germany.
The experience of Germans with an immigrant background is that attitudes are getting harsher. At the same time, they're being told their needs aren't on the political agenda. I think it's extremely dangerous.
A changing climate. Many politicians don't know how to react. 2 election victories in Europe show 2 radically different approaches. France's Emmanuel Macron swore to fight the far right. Austria's Sebastian Kurz poached the far right's topics. Don't let the right set the agenda, warns Caroline Emke.
You can't close off the right flank by becoming right-wing yourself. That's an illusion. You have to decide, do I want to live in a secular, open democracy? If so, then you have to defend these principles.
Karl-Heinz Weissmann from the New Right believes any attack is positive.
What matters, as Mao said, is that to be attacked by the enemy is not a bad thing. It's a good thing because it clearly shows we're onto something and is seen as real competition.
Fatherland, love of country, identity. Terms made popular by the AfD. But who will now set the lead for how these terms are used? A balancing act for Germany's Bundestag.
Yeah, and as a balancing act for this new party as well, Kate. I mean, they are basically a protest party. They are basically a one-issue party. They went from being anti-Euro, now it's anti-immigration. And they have to provide Parliament with more than 90 members now. I mean, that's what they want. Do they have 90 qualified people to actually be parliamentarians? That's a legitimate question for any new party.
Of course, as you mentioned, they have some limited experience. They have members now in 14 of Germany's 16 state parliaments. But a lot of these MPs who entered the Bundestag for the first time today are novices. Mm-hmm. And that could also be an issue in what we mentioned before, in how they behave and their conduct in Parliament. And do they know exactly how to conduct themselves when during a debate?
I mean, during a debate? Or what about how to conduct themselves in the upper echelons of the party? I mean, there have been problems there. Is there the possibility that this party, this far-right party, could basically implode?
Of course, already we've seen just the day after the election, one of the founding members, Frauke Petry, she stood down and is now sitting as an independent in the Parliament. And so we could see the same thing happening. There's already been internal disputes, as you have the more moderate members, and then also you have the even further right-wing members within that party. So there could already be some friction there once Parliament gets underway.
Yeah, I mean, the friction, I think, is already pre-programmed. We'll just have to see how many sparks are created by that. Our political correspondent, Kate Brady, on the story for us tonight. Kate, as always, thank you very much.